I'm a current peer academic advisor at the School of Engineering, and I'm a fourth year computer science and engineering student.
But hello, so good to see so many of you all come out tonight to learn more about the STEM career fair tomorrow. Um, so that's awesome. My name is Allison Keller. I am one of the career counselors at the Division of Career Pathways, and have worked for a while with the School of Engineering, and so this is a big fair for your school, and a great event to participate in. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen and some slides. Um, and feel free to, if you do have questions as we move along, feel free to interject and ask those. I want this to be as useful for you as possible. If you want to put things in the chat, I'll try to check as we go along. And if not in the chat, if I don't see it right away, we'll get to it. We'll get to it eventually for sure. This, let's see. Let me see if I can, I'm actually gonna, this wasn't the view I was aiming to share, I think. Well, that'll work. We'll do that. And let me know if I can pull this back so you can see a bigger picture here. So, as you know, our STEM career fair is tomorrow. It starts at 10 to 2. We will start checking in students a little bit before 10 o'clock. Because usually there's a big lineup of students that want to be there right at the beginning of the event. So typically we might start checking in students around 9:45-ish. It doesn't mean you'll be let into the rooms right away, because we'll still have employers getting settled, but at least to get checked in and get a wristband so that when 10 o'clock comes, that we can get more people going into the fair as quickly as possible. The fair will be held inside. It'll be in our student center in some of the large rooms on the lower level. So we will be in the Pacific Ballroom and also the Emerald rooms. So the check-in will be right outside of Pacific Ballrooms. That's where you can check in, get a wristband, and that wristband will be good all day. So once you check in once, you can come and go throughout the day, and and check it out. Great question. Do you recommend getting there at 10 or beforehand? If you have flexibility to get there a little bit beforehand, um, and you want, like, you're going to be visiting some really busy employers, like the household names, I might recommend getting there early. If you have classes and so forth, no worries, you can come and go throughout the day, between 10 and 2 for sure. But if you have flexibility and you want to try to go to get in early at some places, I think coming a little bit earlier would be great. I'm going to talk more about check-in because it's a little bit different this year. On one of the slides, I have some information, so I will for sure get to that. So let's dive in here, and just trying to move around my screen a little bit. So we have already had a few fairs this fall. So our in-person STEM career fair is tomorrow, as you know, 10 to 2. There's also going to be one more fair this quarter. It's a graduate and professional school fair. So this is for students that have interest in talking with different universities throughout the country. Come to campus, send representatives to talk about their programs. If you have interest in going to grad school, that's a good event. It'll be outdoors on Ring Road. And then we will have more fairs though throughout the year. So what I share today will be good preparation for any of the fairs you might attend. So we have Another big fair happening in winter quarter, as well as some of the smaller fairs. And spring, we also have one more big career fair and some smaller fairs surrounding that as well. Each quarter, we have usually a smaller virtual fair, and that's just because we still have some employers that prefer that um, ability to not travel to campus, and they tend to be like some employers that are a little bit farther away, et cetera. But they're always a lot smaller, but we still like to offer that for students as well. So going into the fair tomorrow, some things to be thinking about. So I know you're here, so you know that how the fair might benefit you. You know, I think a lot of people think about, I want to learn about jobs, I want to learn about internships, which is totally a good reason to go. It's one of the unique times where you get to network with potential employers, like face to face. And I think that's a very valuable thing to take advantage of. So, um, to have those conversations, to ask those questions that you might not be able to find out just by reading information, et cetera. Usually, this is not going to land in a job offer, from just the career fair, but it's usually a starting relationship, starting point to learn more about organizations, to learn more about positions. You can ask questions, and it might help prepare you to be a better candidate as you apply. They might give you a tip on something that's really important for them. And so, of course, you could integrate that. Um, Absolutely. And yes, and it's certainly, I know our peer advisors are going to be adding in some of their tips from attending fairs in the past. So please do. I appreciate that, Abby, for suggesting to print out some resumes beforehand. That's a great idea. I know people always ask me how many resumes to bring, and it's hard for me to answer that question. There's about 120 employers that will be boothing at the fair. You will not talk with all 120, but depending on how much time you want to spend and how much interest you have in the kinds of employers attending, that can help determine how many resumes to bring. And I always say bring a handful more than you think you'll need in case you end up having a good conversation or talking to someone that you weren't expecting to talk to. You don't want to run out of resumes. There are, and we'll talk about ways you can find out, who's coming to the fair, so how many you might be interested in. Um, Lucas asked about a physical copy. Is a digital okay? Actually, at the career fair, this is one of those kind of old school times that it is recommended to have a physical copy, and it doesn't need to be on fancy paper. Totally, printer paper is the norm. Totally fine to submit it that way. You don't have to have it, but it's typical to have a card copy of your resume, and usually you introduce yourself and then you can offer your resume to the employers. So yes, and some companies are using QR codes more and more, so that's a really good suggestion. Oh, and you meant the ID card. Okay, yes, yes, the digital copy is fine, so that's great. Excellent. Good questions. Just want to keep up. Okay, cool. Awesome. Um, if you are a student that's not quite sure, like maybe you're a first, second year student, maybe you're not there like right now, hardcore for a job and or even for an internship, maybe you have something else lined up. I still think the career fair can be very beneficial for just getting exposure, talking to people, learning about opportunities, and you can always ask questions about wherever you're at. Like you could ask questions about things like, what would be something you're looking for in a candidate for a full-time job offer? I'm a second year right now, and I want to be thinking about the projects that I get involved in or the activities. For your company, would it be better to learn this program or this other program? Or perhaps would it be, do you think, how do you view research opportunities? How do you view, um, you know, work study or, all those kinds of things. Feel free to ask those questions that you really have because it is an opportunity to talk to a person. Some people are busy and they're kind of businessy, go, go, go. But then others are, a little bit more open to having those kinds of conversations. And I would welcome you to ask what would be relevant for you at the time. Um, Other good things. I'm going to come back to some of those
Uh, oh,
questions. Oh, go
hi.
ahead, please. Yes.
Hi, sorry, I didn't introduce myself earlier. My headphones is not connected to my computer, so sorry about that. But my name's Abby. I'm a third year chemical engineering major. And just to comment on some things earlier, it's definitely if you're second year, even a first year, start earlier. You will it'll come in handy later. And I do know people that have offers on the spot from the career fair. So it's not impossible, but it's
Great.
definitely for building your network. And the sooner you start, the more easier it's going to be later when you maybe your third year when you're trying to get an internship and also just to learn about industries because especially in engineering, there's so many industries you can go in. And so just learning about these companies and different things that you could go in is really helpful.
That's awesome. I totally agree with that advice. That it's never too early to start. It gets easier. It's like you can become more skilled at networking or just hearing what questions other people are asking. Things like that are very beneficial as for going even before you're ready for that job. So that's really, really good advice. So thank you for adding that in.
Yeah. And for some questions in the chat, the one about some undergrads don't have much related STEM field professional experience. If you ever had a part-time job that looks well, any clubs you're a part of, you don't have to have a leadership, but those names do hold presence in the field. Any relevant coursework, like for me, I'm a chemical engineering major, so on my resume, I have some relevant laboratory classes I was a part of. Um, let's see. If you're first year, you can leave some stuff from high school on it. Just know your interest. If you know any coding languages, Excel, any of those or any soft skills, you can also put on your resume. And
Mhm.
then also, if you're first year trying to find internship, yeah, it's not impossible. I will say a lot of engineering internships kind of want third years because it's pretty common that you intern going into your fourth year and then you already intern for the company, so they'll hire you after college. So that's pretty common. But if you're first year, I do know people that they get an internship after their first year. Um, if you can't really find anything at the career fair that says they're hiring going into your fourth year, I would recommend looking at Handshake. There is some
Mm.
companies out there that will like to hire anyone in college. So you just might need to search a little bit harder, but definitely it's worth a try. And you might have them more so mass apply.
Good point. Good
One more,
point. Please jump in.
sorry. Yeah. Though regarding Vladimir's question about lack of experience in STEM fields, what Abby said about some previous jobs you've had, and one important thing is highlighting some skills that you think are carry over into industry. Recruiters and the people that are interviewing you are not necessarily looking for the technical skills because they know you guys are college students, but they are looking for signs of leadership, um, initiative, and all these sorts of things that would really make you a great person to work with.
Absolutely. Really good points. Yeah, we hear again and again those skills like communication skills, collaboration, teamwork skills are so important to mention. And even thinking about that, like integrating that on your resume, times you've worked with others and on teams, times you've communicated effectively, like you said, leadership potential, things like that are great to incorporate. The other thing that I always hear, and employers love to see on resumes is once you get to the point in your classes where you have projects, you can list those on your resume as well. If it's something you've done in an academic project, it may not be in an internship, it may not be in a job. That's fine. If you can demonstrate a skill, that's awesome to showcase on your resume as well. So you can put things on that are not just like quote unquote work experience. If you've done other things through extracurriculars or through classes because you get such a little space for your education, and yet that's a huge part of what you're doing here. So feel free to elaborate on that, especially if something's relevant to where it is that you're interested in going into or applying. And for those younger students, you may have some really relevant things from high school to put on at this point. So absolutely, all of those are fair game to add on. did you want to, there's one question about repeating the lab. Oh, great. Okay, you did it. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm going to get to the mobile piece because I have a slide about that in just a little bit. So I'm skipping over your question, but I will come back to that. Okay. So beforehand, so if you are just getting ready for this fair right now, you can log into your Handshake account and go to the STEM career fair under events or under fairs and actually see the 120 companies that are signed up to attend the fair. So that's where you can kind of develop a target list, see who's attending. You can check out more about the company, who they are, what they do, and the kinds of positions that they're recruiting for. I recommend doing this in advance if you have some time to do that tonight, so you have a game plan for tomorrow. Of course, you can do it. I see a lot of people on their phones in the middle of the fair, but the student center gets a little spotty reception, so just be aware of that. It's helpful to do it beforehand if possible. Do bring your resume, printing out those copies. We talked about that. We'll talk more about this, but you want to prepare how you want to introduce yourself to each employer that you meet, all these recruiters, or what kinds of questions you want to ask as well, so that you can go in confident. There's a lot of people at this event, so just to feel like it's not so overwhelming as you go in, you kind of know what to expect and who you want to talk to and so forth at the event. Okay. Just checking out the chat for 1 second here. Okay, so how do you make yourself stand out at the fair? This is a question I get a lot of times, and I think if the more you can go in prepared, you look intentional, and I say look intentional, I mean it appears that you came for the fair. It's not that you stumbled upon it walking in from the parking lot. Dressing professionally, it doesn't mean you have to be in a full suit, but dressing for your industry is a good idea. Looks like you're coming for the fair itself. Having those organizations in mind that you'd like to talk to and questions that you want to ask them. Do a little bit of It's much better rather than walking up and saying, "Oh, what do you have for mechanical engineers?" If you could say, "I read a little bit about your XYZ internship. I'd love to hear more about this area." Something a little bit deeper to show that you've read a little bit about what the position is. You have some knowledge base will make you stand out, I promise. And also just going up confidently and having an introduction to yourself is always a great idea as well. And we'll talk more about what that could look like. So, in that introduction, when you are walking up to a table, you're the next person in line. I would practice just how you want to introduce yourself. And so you don't need all of the pieces on this slide, but maybe some of these pieces. So usually you'll start with introducing yourself by name, what area, like what's your major. Some people will mention their class year. Some people don't mention their class year. So if you, it depends on if you don't want them to right away say, "Oh, you're a first year. We're not interested." Maybe you want to start off with what you're studying, what your interests are, and then lead into that. Or maybe if you are someone that's graduating and want them to know that right away, you'd want to start off with, "I'm a graduating senior." Maybe you're graduating off cycle and you want them to know, "I'll be finishing at the end of this quarter and I'm really interested in these opportunities." Um, so good to let them know kind of where you are in the process. Great to let them know kind of so what you're seeking, if you're looking at internships, if you're looking at the full-time opportunities. Again, if you did your research, you can mention specifically those opportunities you might be interested in, and maybe how you connect to that. So I've had some experience in this area, or I've had a class that covered this area, or I have some of these skills. um, so you want to think about, what is your objective? Do you want to learn about the opportunities? Do you want to build a relationship with someone for the future to reach back out to? Maybe you're exploring this now for internships, but they're not looking for interns yet. They're not going to look for interns until next quarter, but maybe you still want to start that conversation. And it's always great once you introduce yourself, then to ask them a question. So it puts the kind of the ball in their court to then respond, and it gives you a break for a minute to listen to what they have to share and to offer back to you. And I'd be genuine in kind of those questions, like, what do you want to know? Because make use of this time. It's good to ask questions that go beyond really basic things you could have read about or researched about yourself, but other kinds of questions that you can't find the information out about so easily, or their perspective or their tips, their advice, are always good things to ask about. This is a simple what it could look like, something to the effect of, um, hello, I'm currently a senior majoring in, my career interests include, I have experience in, and I'm currently seeking blah, blah, blah. So you'll have to kind of fill in those gaps, and it might sound a little different for different companies, and that's totally fine too. So that's normal if it's a little bit different for different companies. Here's a few questions you could ask. What do they enjoy most about this industry or this company? That's kind of that ending question, thanking them for their time and just for visiting UCI, that sort of thing. And I can share these slides out with you all at the end. So I won't read them to you. You can read them later if that would be helpful. We have some more examples. So just a lot of examples, because you want this to be authentic. I want this to be natural for you, and I don't want it to feel forced. But here's just another way to introduce yourself and to share, some information about your background. And again, you can integrate classes. You might not have the experience in this field. That's no problem. That's normal. That's why they're here. They understand that you're a student. But you do want to connect why you're interested, like what kind of sparked that for you. Really good. Thank you for inserting some of that in. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll also say, especially if you do connect with a recruiter, try to get their names or even ask just straight up for their LinkedIn, because that's very helpful, and you can continue the conversation after the career fair, and maybe you're doing your application for the company and they can help you write it, or maybe even say like, I'll give you that reference. So definitely, if you can, if you're talking long enough, some recruiters do like ask you for your LinkedIn, but definitely make sure you know their names.
Absolutely. Yes. LinkedIn is probably the most common way. Like, we encourage LinkedIn for students because so many employers use it actively. So it's a really good way to stay in touch with someone. Some recruiters use it more for their recruiting purposes than they do their email even. So it is a good way. And then if they, let's say they migrate and move companies over time, you can stay in touch with them down the road as well. So good advice. So definitely, work on your introduction. What I mean by that is just practice it and practice saying it out loud, because it sometimes it is not natural for us to have to introduce ourselves professionally all the time, and you will get better at it the more you do it. And some people recommend, you could practice with a friend, you could practice with one of us when you get there if you wish to do that. You could also, even maybe go up to not your dream organization company first and practice talking, just so you start to get in the rhythm and comfortable, because it gets easier the more you do it. So just take some time to practice that, and just that basic 1 minute introduction of yourself. So I talked about like coming in professionally and what does that mean, and It does depend so much on industry, and different industries have different expectations of what's professional in terms of dress and presentation. I think overall it's a good practice, however, to treat this as if, like I said, like you're intentional, you're coming to the fair. So if you have the ability to you know, in between, I know everything you have going on, but to come in, looking more professional than your everyday, you want to be comfortable because you're walking around and standing a lot, but come in neat and clean and pressed. A lot of people do wear, probably the most common look are like dress shirts or blouses with dress pants. That's probably the most common. We do see everything from suits, but that's probably not as common as kind of a higher level of what we call kind of business casual, so a little bit above jeans level, and not in sweatshirts kind of thing, but kind of a nice kind of presentable blouse, sweater. A lot of people will wear like a button down shirt. That's very common look. um and there'll also be people in t-shirts and shorts there too. We will not turn anyone away, but you just think about what's that first impression and so forth. And so coming in, and it will help you be more confident and so forth. To come in looking like you intended to come to the fair and talk with these recruiters. Um, and be aware there will be some lines, most likely. If it's like any other year, there'll be some lines, and then there'll be some tables that are kind of open most of the time. So you want to take their cues. Sometimes they'll take like little groups of people, or sometimes there'll be a recruiter that's kind of sifting people out of like, oh, hearing that you're a chem engineer, be good if you talk with this person, wait over here, or this person over here. So it depends on how many staff they have coming to this event. So they manage it in different ways. Like I know Abby said, like some do make it almost like they'll ask a lot of questions, many interviews. And others will say apply on handshake. That's a common thing people say, like or apply on our website. You have, in order to be an official applicant, you need to go through those channels. So just pay attention to what they recommend, and if you need to make some notes at the end. I think that's a wonderful suggestion of trying to remember. They might not have a business card, but they'll probably either share their name or have a name tag. Try to make note of who you talk to. So if you wanted to reference them down the road in an email and a follow up, you could say who you spoke with at the fair, and that would just establish that connection, which would be all the more like high touch and personal, which would be a great thing to do. So I do want to get to during the fair and some things that are a little different to this fair for us. Um, so as you know, UCI is moving away from the physical ID card to this digital ID, and that's how we will be checking in people tomorrow. This is our first fair we're doing it, so we are hoping it goes really smoothly and hopefully quicker than even before. But and I'll turn to a little bit to Abby and Akshay if you have thoughts on this too. But so I'm not a student, but what I hear is that you can download your digital ID like in your Apple Wallet or your Google equivalent of that, and have it ready for. And we have scanners that will just scan it really fast. So it should be a pretty seamless process. If for some reason you don't have that accessibility, we do have a way to type in your net ID and get you signed in. So that's not a problem. We're going to of course have an alternative in case this it doesn't work smoothly and successfully. Um, we also will have a fare map available in the morning. We'll definitely have it on QR codes if you want to scan it and figure out where your the companies you want to talk to are. Again, there are two big spaces. So if you're not seeing, sometimes people don't realize there's two big spaces for this fair. So the Pacific Ballroom is the bigger one, but then there's also the Emerald Rooms. So you'll want to check out both, if or look at the two on the map if you're trying to find someone. Um, we talked about kind of those introductions. So when you go up to give your 1-minute introduction, it's great to walk up to them and make that eye contact so they know that you're ready to chat with them and introduce yourself with that confidence. And again, jot down notes between meetings and so forth. Oh, thank you. I think Caesar put in yes, the Zotkey download. Awesome. That's super helpful. So that's going to probably, if you have that ready to go, it'll probably lead to the most efficient check-in process for you. So we don't have to type in that information. So that would be great. And yes, I see Abby's comment above with the dress business casual. You'll feel comfortable if you might feel underdressed if you're not business casual. So that is recommended. Very good questions. Any
Yeah.
any thoughts? Yes, please add in.
Yeah, more for about kind of like the elevator pitch. Definitely state what you're looking for and tailor to each company. Also include your goals and interests and what you're already involved in. And if you're kind of like a first year or second year, and you're not necessarily looking for like our internship, or you're kind of unsure, like I don't have the experience or something, ask them what they look for in applicants or what they're missing in their applicant pool. That's really helpful, so you know what the kind of what they're looking for later. And also, I think I like to answer and my pitch as a question, so it's more of a conversation and try. So that's why you should probably think of a pretty strong question that is kind of thoughtful and can't be answered in a Google search.
Mhm. Yes, I think that's great. Excellent. And this is some information on the access to your mobile ID for the check-in and so forth. So we're going to have a lot of these available at the event tomorrow too. So so if you are having problems, we'll have some different ways that you can upload that. I'm just curious, is that a common, are you using this a lot anyway? Is this something you're used to? The mobile ID? No? Okay. We'll see how it goes then tomorrow. Okay, new for us too. I didn't know if this is something like, oh, we're doing this all the time anyway on campus. So, okay. They're trying to push at the dining hall, sporting events. Okay, yes, yes. Well, we have heard the physical IDs won't work anymore. So that's why we're looking at this other alternative. Yes, absolutely. Getting on board. So you'll be our experimental group to go through this. Very good. But I think it's gonna work out okay. Oh, here's some more information about the digital ID. I didn't even see this was put in. So if you haven't done it yet, where to log in, select mobile ID, log in using your Duo, and add to your GPay or your Apple Wallet. And you can also provide us with your UCI Net ID, of course. Okay, so more questions that you could of course, the specific ones are going to be best. Like if you have done your research and you have some questions about the internship or about the company, but some general ones you could always ask. Or if you're curious about, some people will ask about things like the timing of their internship programs. Is it something they have during the academic year? If it's a local company as well as the summer. You could ask questions about projects that interns in the past or new grads have worked on. I always love the question about like, what are skills that you look for that would help me be the most competitive applicant? I think that those are good things to hear and to learn about. And it's not, as Akshay said, it's not always the technical things, which they see that in your major. They know your competencies. So a lot of times they want to see those other pieces as well. And of course, you could ask them for their LinkedIn or business card especially if you see they have a stack of them and you would like one to follow up. Always good things to ask about. So after the fair, as a wrap up, you can always ask the recruiter if it hasn't come up naturally in your conversation, more about the process. They'll probably share with you what the process is, but in case they didn't, to learn how they like to receive applications. You know, again, a lot of times they say go on Handshake and apply, or go to our website and apply as well. So they have a formal application from you. They might also take a copy of your resume, because sometimes they'll do some cross checking of that with that formal process of the application coming in. You can always send follow-ups, and that's where like the LinkedIn invitation can be really awesome to send. Like, I really enjoyed meeting you at the UCI STEM Career Fair. You know, you can always thank them through that, or send an email of thanks as well. And definitely check out, you know, what they have. You may, from your conversation, may want to update your resume and send them a revised version from what you gave them at the fair. That's totally fine to do. You know, because maybe you learned, oh gosh, I'd really like to elaborate on this project, because the skills that I demonstrated in that would be really relevant to the work at this organization or whatever. Or maybe they seemed really interested in my, you know, involvement in, you know, a certain student club, an organization, and that leadership, and you want to highlight that more. So feel free to do that. Feel free to tailor your documents, your emails to the organization that you're talking with. We always find that to be useful for students to do that, and most successful in getting those callbacks for hopefully the next stage, which would be typically an interview at that time. Um, we are, I just want to put a little plug for our office. We're always you know, available for consultations as you go through this process throughout the year. So we have one-on-one appointments you can schedule through Handshake. We tend to put them out week by week. So we tend to put them out on Thursday for the following week. So you might not see anything yet for next week, and don't worry that there's no appointments. We just find we have a better rate of or less like no shows and cancellations and things like that if we do it kind of close to the time. So we put them out again Thursdays for the following week. We also have drop-in advisings that do not require appointments. So in our office on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in person, you can drop in without an appointment between 12 and 2 and have your resume looked at, or have a cover letter looked at, or ask a quick question, practice your 1-minute introduction. On Thursdays and Fridays, we do our drop-ins via Zoom, and you can just drop in. There's a link on Handshake, and if you have some questions there, we have some folks on call as well there. And our office, if you haven't visited us, it's right across from the Starbucks in the Student Center. So across the Ring Road. And so we're there, we're physically open Monday through Thursday, 9 to 5. And we do have appointments on so forth on Friday. They're just all virtual on Friday. So feel free to come by and visit us. One other feature we have at our office, if you ever want to do a headshot, we do have a photo booth, and you're welcome to come by anytime we're open and take a free headshot in our photo booth, and use it like for your LinkedIn profile, or if you have other kinds of needs for that, you're welcome to take advantage of that. Good question. So, Ethan asked, would you, are we able to review resumes and provide feedback over email rather than meetings? So for the first time meeting, we do prefer a drop-in or an in-person meeting, because we ask a lot of questions. We like to find out, like, you know, why, what's the purpose of the resume, how you're using it. You know, I tend to ask more as we go along, and if I just have it on email, I can only work with what I know. Sometimes though, for follow-up, we will do emails after that point, because then we've asked those questions and can kind of go from there. But usually for the first one, I'd recommend either scheduling an appointment or doing a drop-in. Totally fine to do that. Any other questions that you have right now? I'm going to stop sharing for a minute in case anyone wants to be brave and come off and mute. You're welcome to, or feel free to use the chat too. Um, And just want to make sure that we leave enough time to see if you have questions and concerns about tomorrow or for other pieces. Where can I find the handshake? Yes, so good question. So the handshake link for drop-ins, it stays the same, I will say, all it for throughout the quarter. If you go under events, and if you go to any Thursday or Friday, you're going to find virtual drop-ins. And if you click on that, it's going to have a handshake, or sorry, a Zoom link. And so you can just join that Zoom link for the Thursday, Friday. And I'll be honest, I typically am on those, and everyone comes at 12. We're there from 12 to 1. So I don't recommend coming at 12:45 because you might if there's a lot of people, you might not be seen, but it's okay to come at 12:15. It's okay, and you might not have to wait, until that first round goes through. So because it's first come, first serve on those. Are there career fairs later? Yes. So we do have career fairs every quarter. So there'll be another virtual and in-person fair in the winter and in the spring, as well as some smaller fairs that are more specific to certain like career industry areas. I know typically the Engineering Student Council also does a career fair in winter quarter, typically at the end of February, around that time. So there are other opportunities aside from this fair. I will say this is probably the biggest fair of the year for STEM. So this is a great one to kick it off with. And if you attend, you'll really be prepared for the future ones as well moving forward. And we tend to have the biggest student crowd for this one too. So just to be honest with you, if it's your first event, I just want you to come in prepared and not feel overwhelmed. It's just a lot of people usually, and people get through and so forth, but it can be overwhelming for your first fair to see some lines and that sort of thing. Question is, should I make my GPA visible on Handshake and on my resume? So that's a really good question. I would say it depends. So it depends on, do you want to market your GPA? Do you feel good about it? And is it important for your industries? So, sometimes you can tell through job descriptions if they have a minimum GPA, and you meet that, I would definitely put it on. But you'll find some industries, it's not the be all end all factor in their requirements of what they're looking for. And if you don't feel like it's the most reflective of your skills and abilities, or you don't want someone right away to see that, feel free to not include it on. And of course it might come up, but yeah, I would say it does depend, but take cues from job descriptions you're seeing if it seems to be something that they're looking for. And of course think about what it is. Some people say there's a gray line at about a 3.0, but I think it just depends on your industry a lot, about that, and we'd be happy to work with you one-on-one about that too. And I see someone said, ah, oh, a midterm. Oh my goodness, I know. So it is there until 2. So if you of course come after that if you can, that's totally fine to do that. Um oh, where do you select whether your GPA is visible? So I don't believe your GPA is visible on Handshake, actually. I don't know if you can make that part visible. On your resume, obviously, and you can make a resume public, meaning like employers can see that resume. So you could put it on there. Oh, it asked you when you set up your account. Okay, they are always changing features, so that could be a feature that they have. That when you set it up. Interesting. I would have to dig into that a little bit because I have not been ever asked about that or seen that from the student perspective. Interesting about the GPA. I'll look into that a little bit more. That's interesting. I don't think my understanding is that an employer cannot say only make a job visible to people with certain GPAs. So that's one thing to think about too. So okay, good. Let's see. if you expressly opt into sharing it. Okay, an education setting. Oh, thanks for pulling that out so quickly, Abby. That is great. That is something I've never been asked about. So really good question. So thanks for asking. And I'm happy to share the slides later. Yes, yes. And I see there's a hand up. So feel free if you want to come off mute, Vladimir, and ask your question.
Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
All right. I was curious, so I didn't set my handshake yet. It's my first year at UCI. I'm a transfer student. Do do the does the UCI handshake show my GPA that is transferable as well from the college that I was attending before, or is it only the UCI GPA, which I don't even have at the moment
Right,
because it's my
right.
first quarter?
My understanding, and you could look on your account and see what it has in your GPA, but I think it would only be your UCI GPA.
Oh, okay.
You
So like I would put the GPA that I would had before on my resume or something to like actually like
Yes, you
show
could
it.
do that. So you could have like your previous GPA on your public like you can set a resume to be public and that they could see that there. But my understanding is I don't think there's a place that would download a previous, GPA from like a transfer student or something like that. Unless I'm wrong, because it sounds like there's some new stuff going on with that, or it might not be new, but just something I haven't really been asked about. But look at your own account and your profile and see what it says there for you.
Oh, okay. I haven't looked a lot into it because there's like so many things on the
Mm-hmm.
website that you can have access to,
There
different
there
places
is.
like
They're
Zlatan
really
registry.
Yes, and they're always changing them for us, which keeps things interesting too, because we get it down and then it's like, oh, they changed a whole setting and feature, which is normal with technology. But yeah, that does happen for sure. So I would check under like my profile, and it sounds like Abby found it was under education, so you could look there and see what it's appearing to put. If it has anything, it might have nothing. It might have like, just leave that blank until you have something. So
Okay, I
the
appreciate it.
it does get my understanding the GPA does get yes, absolutely. We can share them via email. The slides, it downloaded from the registrar though. So it'll be like the exact GPA. It's one of the few things like you can opt, it sounds like into share or not, but you can't like change the number. But you can change other things, like you can change your major and minor and things like that. But that is one of the direct registrar lines
I
on the
got you.
handshake.
And the last question that I have, I have arrived to US into 11th grade in high school,
Mm-hmm.
and I had some gaps after high school. Like in college, I had a year gap
Mm-hmm.
in my well, it's like a year. It's technically like half a year, but still like there's a gap in my education path because I had to deal with my visa purposes, like
Mm-hmm.
visa documents purposes, and I could not like attend college
Sure. Mm-hmm.
at this time because I would be paying international tuition, which is like 20 times
Mm-hmm.
more, which I could not afford. Do employers like pay like a huge attention to like gaps or like maybe like for me, for example, because of this gap, it took like a 2 year, like almost like 2.5 or 3 years to finish college only, which should be usually like done in like 1/2 or like 2 years maximum. Do they like
Right.
look at it or no?
Honestly, most employers, I don't think they're scrutinizing the gaps that much, especially for those. That's a short-term gap in the bigger picture of what a gap might look like. In a long-term career progression, if you have years of a gap, that's where they might be curious about, like, oh, what were you doing during that time, or how did you sustain, your skills or so forth during that time if you took time off for various reasons. But if it's something like a 6-month period, that's usually not noticeable thing. What we hear from employers, and I try to impress this upon students, is they are interested in the end date. Like, so they don't, a lot of times they're like, don't even worry about when you started. I don't care if this program took you 3 years or 6 years. To be honest, I care about when you're ready to work. So like they care that you're graduating in June 2024. So you don't even need to put necessarily like when you started at UCI. So I know I've worked with some transfer students that are like, oh, this might take me, this amount of time. Is that, I'm like, I don't think that matters at all. They really just care about when that completion date is. So don't worry about how fast or how slow. For various reasons, people are at different speeds to complete those programs. If there's a large gap, I do think they might want to see just how the time was used, or were you able to do something again to keep up skills, or was there something that how were you able to fill your time? But you should be fine with what you're describing. Absolutely. And with COVID, things got all wonky anyway, honestly. And so people had all kinds of situations going on or reasons why they couldn't work. And so I think there's been a lot of grace given over the last 5-year chunk of time for that reason as well. So I wouldn't over worry about it or feel like you have to over explain unless they ask you about it.
Yeah, I got you. All right. I appreciate that.
Mhm.
Thank you very much.
I know that's great. So, a question about connecting with recruiters on LinkedIn. I think absolutely. LinkedIn is the platform. If they're on there to connect. So professionally. So feel free to reach out and connect. Ask to connect with recruiters on LinkedIn. That's a very appropriate place to do that. So especially if you meet anyone at this fair, they're obviously interested in engaging with UCI students. So feel free to asked to connect through LinkedIn. So that's a great idea. And again, if you are working on that, we do help students on their LinkedIn profiles and that sort of thing too. So um, that's always, if you haven't done that yet, put that in the back of your mind to consider starting a LinkedIn profile for yourself as well.
Yes, definitely do that. A lot of people I know who got their internships, LinkedIn was somehow involved in that process. It really is what can separate you from other applicants. So definitely make a profile if you don't have one, keep it updated. And also, it's a great way to have proof about what you're doing because you can add more digital documents. So it's really a great way to see visually what you have done rather than just on paper explaining it. So definitely keep that up. Also, if you can go early, do go early because recruiters also get tired. And like the STEM career fair is definitely a lot of people. So if you go early, you can probably get the best conversations and try to put a great impression on the recruiters.
I'll echo that. Yes, if you can go early. The other thing is they get hungry and they eat lunch. So sometimes there might be 2 or 3 people at their booth, but they'll swap off for lunch. So sometimes during that lunch hour or so, there are less people at the booth, whereas in the morning, usually they're all there. So you might have a better chance of getting in. So if you have total time options, I would either go in the morning or even like, 1 o'clock or so. And I see another hand up. Feel free to ask your question, Lucas.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Absolutely.
So I myself do not have a LinkedIn profile as of yet, and I'm curious what makes a good LinkedIn profile? Is it, I know so little about it, but I'm just curious if you could offer me tips. Is it the people you're connected with? Is it just the ability to connect with people that makes it good? I'm unfamiliar with the whole world of LinkedIn in the moment.
Absolutely. I'm happy to take a stab. Abby, would you like to share your thoughts? It sounds like you're pretty familiar with LinkedIn, and I'm going to grab a little handout on LinkedIn that I'll drop in the chat too.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I can talk about LinkedIn. So a lot of things what you mentioned. Well, first it's your own profile. So you have your own page and then you have a profile picture so they can see your face. You can design a background like mine says. I've made mine on Canvas. It's like Abby McDonald Chemical Engineering. And then you go down and you have like a bio. And that's when you can summarize kind of everything you've done and what you're looking for and just kind of add personality. So I think a good LinkedIn page also is not just a bunch of bullet points. It also kind of shows like a personality and what you're passionate in and what you're actually interested in. So it just gives you more space to kind of express like what you're looking for, what you have done into a website page basically. And then you can go down and then you can add your resume right there. And you can list all your experiences, and you can also, with those experiences, collect all the skills from that experiences. So it's very easy for recruiters to see like, okay, you did this, 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 and also from that you have got these skills and cross match that with what they're looking for in applicants. So it's just very easy to see, and definitely recruiters will like look you up on LinkedIn if you apply or